this episode of the Budding Watch Enthusiast. So Baselworld 2019 took place just over this past week, and I'm recording this the Monday afterward. So I've got two videos coming for you guys about Baselworld 2019. I'm going to do the same video that I did last year where I give you my top 5 watches that were debuted at the show. That's going to be coming later on this week. Today, I'm going to be talking about my Baselworld 2019 winners and losers from the show. The brands that really brought it and the brands that were a little bit lacking. Before we get into that, my wristwatch check today, I'm wearing my Sal Baltimore Founders Edition. And I'm wearing it on this Manta fabric strap that came with my Manta SkyQuest, which has quickly become pretty much my favorite NATO strap in my collection so far. So winners and losers from Baselworld 2019. It's going to be funny calling a couple of these companies losers because they're still going to be laughing all the way to the bank after this. These are just the brands, or in the case of the, we're going to talk about the Basel show itself a little bit later on, that just did not bring it for me. Let's get the elephant in the room knocked out right away, and that, of course, is Tudor. So arguably the most talked about watch, and not necessarily for positive reasons, from Basel 2019 was the Tudor Black Bay P01. For those of you that aren't aware, this is a prototype watch that they designed in the 60s for the US military that never ended up finding its way into a production run, and they thought it would be really cool to bring it back out in full production. The problem is the watch is really ugly. Like it just really is ugly. Apparently folks that were at the show that got hands-on time with the watch said it was better in person than it was in pictures. I think the biggest problem that Tudor had is that if they had just released this watch, I don't think they would have caught as much flack. I think the biggest thing they did that got them in trouble beforehand was they teased this image, where they made it look like this triangle marker was sitting at a 9 o'clock position, and they just made people think that it was going to be a Tudor Submariner. And I think expectations were one of the reasons why folks were so disappointed by this watch. You can find all sorts of hot takes on this watch. The fact is, I just think it's ugly, but I don't have a lot of things to really say about it. They're still going to probably sell well, I bet. I guarantee you there's some folks that are going to really dig it. For me, though, the most disappointing aspect of Tudor's presentation at Basel this year, they went super hard on the steel and gold line that I really, really hate personally. Okay, the chronograph's kind of cool, but that's it. Everything else is blah. I guess the steel and gold line must be really popular for them, but I am not a fan of combining those finishes. Personally, it's a way too flashy look in my eyes. Yeah, I can't believe that this is the only thing that they brought to the table to kind of shape up the other Black Bay lines. They also revealed a new Black Bay bronze. Whatever. I hope the gray dial is more popular than the brown dial version they came out with a couple years ago that I see listed all over watch reselling forums and stuff like that right now. So yeah, Tudor, I talked about it in the live stream Q&A that, disappointment is relative to expectations. I think folks were expecting a lot from Tudor this year, and yeah, they just kind of really fell flat, and they were the subject of conversation for all the wrong reasons, but I guess they say any press is good press. So I guess from that respect, they had the most talked about watch of the weekend for sure, so I guess in that respect, they did fine. And of course, you can't talk about Tudor without talking about Rolex. It wasn't even that Rolex did anything particularly disappointing this year. I think their whole lineup was just a yawner. The only watch that even was mildly interesting to me that they released was the new Yachtmaster 42. Only because I think that the normal Yachtmasters, the bezel on them looks extremely gaudy. The one on the 42 that they debuted is a little bit more reserved, a little bit better looking. But again, here's the problem. That's a watch that's only going to appeal to super hardcore Rolex fans that can afford it because it's coming out in white gold and it's going to cost over $25,000. So, like I said, if you are a huge fan of the Yachtmaster line, you got this coming at you. Also, it comes on this Oyster Flex rubber strap, which a lot of folks really would have just preferred it on a bracelet, honestly, especially at that price point. And the Oyster Flex does have a metal bracelet within the rubber strap, but again, most folks aren't going to look at it from that perspective. The other watch that they debuted that had a lot of folks talking is the new stainless steel Batman GMT on a Jubilee bracelet, which was really polarizing for Rolex fans, and again, not one that I saw a lot of positive positive reaction to. I don't think it's a coincidence that the market on the BLNR Batman on the Oyster bracelet had shot up immediately after they announced that Jubilee version. I think a lot of folks really aren't feeling the Batman on a Jubilee. It does look weird. Like, for some reason, when I see the Jubilee bracelet, all I can picture is the Pepsi bezel version, and the Batman does just look odd on it. It really does, and it's amazing just what changing one color will do, but it does look weird. The rest of what they showed really didn't, do anything for me either. And they do have the ladies Datejust with the green dial and the gold numerals. Fine, upgrading the movement in the Datejust 36, whatever. But again, I think folks were looking for something really cool from Rolex this year. Again, setting expectations poorly. They teased what looked like could be a refresh of the Submariner, and instead people got that Yachtmaster. So again, Rolex, very underwhelming. They're not going to care. They're going to sell every watch they're putting out. But, it just didn't do anything for me. Now, my third and final loser is the Baselworld show itself. Now, of course, I wasn't at the show, so it's kind of silly to speak on this. And from what I understand, folks that went over there did have a great time as per usual. The problem is that the show really had to come out with a really strong showing this year, especially because this is the first year since the Swatch Group up and left as presenters from Baselworld, and the 30 brands that go along with that as well. So you really needed a home run, and I just don't know if they got that this year. I don't know if the buzz from the show is going to be enough to really not only bring back a lot of those brands, but also, now we're talking about companies like Breitling possibly pulling out of Baselworld as well. That would be a huge loss for them as well. The show still feels like it's on very shaky ground. Now, I'd recommend going and listening to, I think it was part 4 of the Hodinkee Radio Baselworld series of shows that they put out on their podcast, because they do a deep dive into what the future of the show might look like. And apparently the organizers of the event had this new initiative that they're going to be rolling out next year that it's very consumer facing, very digital focused. So that could be very interesting if they can somehow modernize it and still keep those brands in the mix. That's going to do very well for them. But again, it's got to be a big show next year. They do have the fortunate benefit of being back to back with SIHH, so folks will already be there, and a lot of brands will already be there to present and cover it. So hopefully they don't get a mass exodus or anything like that. But I think the Baselworld show needing a big year and still coming out in a state of flux is definitely disappointing for 2019 as well. That's enough of the disappointments. Let's talk about the brands that I think really won the show at Baselworld this year. The first brand that we're going to highlight is going to be Sinn. They had a couple of watches that really caught a lot of folks' attention. They're returning the Arctis line of chronographs. The Arctis line is a line that Sinn used to do of chronographs that can withstand extreme temperatures. They also did a bit of a refresh with their Frankfurt line as well. Some really cool watches in there. And a lot of folks were talking about the green dialed Sinn 104 that is coming out this year. And I think that's a really sharp color for that watch that works well, doesn't make it too flashy, doesn't make it something that the Sinn 104 is not. Just a really great alternative for folks that are big fans of Sinn. Bulova is my next brand that really had a great 2019 showing, and I think they kind of flew under the radar a little bit. They weren't being buzzed about, but I loved almost every single watch that they showed at the fair. The first one, we had to talk about it, the return of the Bulova Computron. I kind of want one just as a novelty more than anything else. Like, it's not, that wouldn't be a practical purchase whatsoever, but the fact they're bringing it back out and it is as retro chic as you would expect is really cool, and again, I kind of want one. The Joseph Bulova collection that they showed off is also a very slick looking collection. It's going to be a great option for folks that are looking for that 20s, 30s, 40s vintage aesthetic in a watch, but that don't want to dive into the very expensive and potentially very tumultuous vintage market for watches that were produced around that time. And they also showed off a couple different colorways for the Bulova Oceanographer, aka the modern version of the Devil Divers. And all of these colors are amazing. I love all of them. I could easily see myself buying one of the teal and black versions. And then as a result of that, my wife will be stealing that watch and probably wearing it much more than I ever could possibly hope to. So great year this year from Bulova. I have to talk about Patek Philippe. I'm not going to talk a lot about Patek Philippe because their brand is certainly not in the purview of my channel as newer watch collectors. I don't think that me or a lot of the folks watching this are going to plan on buying a Patek anytime soon. But just as someone who's a fan of watches, I really love a lot of the ones that they debuted this year. The Alarm Travel Time is a stunning watch that I'm going to be forced to talk about more in my next video. It was one of the show-stopping watches for me from the Basel weekend that I saw online. I'm also really digging the Calatrava weekly calendar that they debuted. I think it's really kitschy and really attractive with that sort of hand-drawn font that they're using. Very polarizing aspect for a lot of folks, but I think it's pretty cool. I'm also really digging the 5078G minute repeater that they showed off as well. Just a really cool looking watch with a really ostentatious complication having a minute repeater. Now my big winner, Oris, really brought the fire to Basel this year. Now it's funny because Oris is a brand that I have a lot of respect for, but they've never really done a lot to excite me with their watches. I think their diver lines, both the Aquis and the Diver 65, are very blasé. They've never really done anything for me. And most of the watches that Oris does come out with that I am really interested in usually come in at a price point that's way more than I'd want to pay. But not this year. Like I said, they brought a lot of fire to Basel this year. Last year in my top 5 video, I talked about the Big Crown Pointer Date in blue as one of my top 5 watches from the show. It was definitely my favorite colorway from that line. That is, of course, until they debuted the burgundy red Big Crown Pointer Date at Basel this year. That is a stunning color on a watch that I think is a really cool design. It's a very bold color that you don't often see from the larger watch brands. They also debuted a steel and bronze version of this watch with a navy blue dial that really looks stunning as well. Easily, both of these eclipse the ones that they brought out last year in my eyes. The new Big Crown Pro Pilot Timer GMT might be my favorite Oris watch in their entire line. I just think it's a really smartly designed watch that does a great job of laying out a host of incredibly useful complications. And another watch that you're going to hear me talk about more in my next video is the Oris Aquis Great Barrier Reef Limited Edition 3. This is the first Oris dive watch that I've ever actually truly desired. Fantastic looking blue. I love the radial date complication that's in the center of the dial. They had a couple limited edition watches that came out that were made to highlight Oris's efforts in highlighting ocean conservation. This for me is definitely the one to get though. Love the Great Barrier Reef edition they come out with. And again, it's something you'll hear me talk about more in the next video that I'm going to put out. But yeah, for me, Oris absolutely stole the show this year. Like I said, I wasn't expecting to be blown away by what they were bringing, but like I said, they just knocked it out of the park this year. Really loved everything that they had to show. That's it for this video, guys. Tune in later this week when I'm going to lay out my top 5 watches from Baselworld, period. Let me know in the comments below who you think the biggest winners and losers were from Basel 2019. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you guys very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, do me a favor, hit the like button down there below. Of course, if you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. Click that red subscribe button and ring the bell icon so that you never miss a new episode that I post. And if you'd like to follow me on Instagram, all you have to do is seek out @buddingwatchenthusiast and click the follow button there as well. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you all the next time.